We are now ready to start with the next plenary session, Redefining MSMEs for the Smallest Businesses. May I have the pleasure of welcoming on stage Mr. N. Srinivasan, expert, development finance and rural livelihoods, to please join us on stage as he is also the moderator for this session. May I also invite on stage the panelists for this session, along with the moderator. Please join me in welcoming on stage Mr. Ramesh Arunachalam, independent consultant. We warmly welcome Mr. Amit Arora, Rural Development Finance Specialist, World Bank Group. May I request you all to please join us on stage. So before we begin the session, we have a release for the study titled Women-Led Development, Locating Opportunities in the Non-Farm Sector. This has been authored by Mr. Ramesh Arunachalam. May I request Ms. Meenakshi Rathore from Access to please join us on the stage for the release. And also, may I once again request and invite Mr. Vipin Sharma to please join us on the stage for the release. May I request you all to please join us front and center. Thank you all. May I request Ms. Meenakshi and Mr. Vipin to please take their seats back amongst the audience. And with that, we offer our heartiest congratulations to the author. And may I request Mr. N. Srinivasan to please take over the session.
Thank you at the outset, Ramesh. Congratulations for this publication. Also, the authors of the Insight Report on Nano Entrepreneurs in the Informal Sector. I wish this publication was available about an hour earlier because this session is about that. I realize that we stand in competition of two significant factors among the audience. One is lunch. We are competing with the time that's available before lunchtime. The second is your screen time on your mobiles. Hopefully, both of these challenges we will meet as we go into the session. I have two veterans here on my side. Ramesh has been a long time, what do you call, researcher, academic, consultant, working on different areas in the sector, helping large projects, small projects, and large institutions. Amit, with the World Bank now, formerly with GIZ, had traversed the entire, what do you call, distance on enterprises, livelihood, both in agriculture and off agriculture sectors. Today, the central question that we are trying to look at is, do we need to identify the very small enterprises in what is called the MSME sector separately? What exactly will that achieve? And where do we think such a defined, very small nano type of sector would actually lead us? So before we get into the question, I'm hoping this session is going to be pretty conversational. I would only like to start with some of the things like the NSSO 73rd round, which looked into the unorganized enterprises. They came out saying that there are about some 65 million odd such enterprises, which are either own account or which at least employ one person. So this is the type that they have said is unorganized. The Udayami registration says there are about some 40 million odd, what do you call, such units. But these are not unorganized because they are registered over there. But then, when we look at the overall definition of the ministry, anything that is 1 crore in investment or 5 crores in turnover is called micro. I was just telling in a previous discussion with my fellow panelists, when you say anything smaller than an elephant is a small animal, we do not know where the squirrels go, right? We might be able to identify goats maybe. So the kind of definition that operates now, it fails maybe 97, 98% of enterprise effort that is taking place in the country, whether it is organized or unorganized. So is there something that we can do by identifying them separately? Is it that will promote the nano enterprises in a bigger way, because we know that there's a separate definition available, we are able to easily identify them? These are some of the questions. I will, what do you call, question my panelists from a skeptic point of view, so that we arrive at something far superior than mere skepticism. First, I think I ask you, Amit, is it necessary that we should redefine the, what do you call, classes of industries when it comes to MSME? Should there be a separate sector called tiny or nano in that?
Sure. Thank you for that question. But before that, squeezed between two veterans who've been very frequently writing state of the sector reports makes me anxious, more so since I am a last minute step in. So please pardon me for that. To answer your question, in my personal view, very plain and simple, yes. No, very much required, because as you said, micro enterprise, somebody who's taking a loan of 1 crore rupee, turnover of 2 crore plus, is also a micro enterprise, and the mudra segment or its sub segments are also in common parlance considered as a micro enterprise. So obviously, the two end extremes cannot be clubbed as one. The traits are very, very different. Then, having said so, why it is required? See, as a nation, we see how we are progressing. If we, slice and dice the data, we see the organized sector, the scale of financing that they have been getting, has been fairly improving, especially with the GST, advent of GST, the GST plus segments, more avenues have opened up. The shadow banking segment has credit is also expanded, and so on and so forth. So at an ecosystem, what we need to see is what is not getting as much of attention and as much of financing, and where employment comes. It was pointed out, 97% coming from micro needs obviously further sub segmentation. So I would say clearly that needs a further breakup. And also, because maybe I'm jumping the gun, because achieving priority sector targets under MSME today is not a big challenge, because there are multiple avenues, even for foreign banks who usually used to be a laggard. You can trade in certificates and so on and so forth, or do wholesale lending to achieve those targets. So how do you ensure that the impetus and the focus remains at the lower end of the spectrum, especially when this is inclusion and priority sector? Definitely it's required.
Ramesh, since you have also, what do you call, done this tome on women-led enterprises, we are slightly gender neutral in this session. Do you, what do you call, support what Amit is saying? Look, there is advantage to defining them and identifying them separately. Are there any other thoughts further to that?
Thank you, Srinivasan sir, and thank you, Amit. Before coming on, we had a meeting at the speaker's corner. I said, at the risk of sounding stupid, I'm going to say whatever comes to my mind. So Srinivasan sir said, there is nothing that's stupid, so you can go ahead and talk. So I requested them to manage for me in case I sound stupid. But let's go back to this fundamental question, sir. Why do you need taxonomies? Why do you need classifications? I mean, you defined it beautifully, and Amit also said it very nicely. If you're going to put anything that's less than investment 1 crore and turnover 5 crores all under one category, does it make sense? I mean, there are different challenges for different categories. All of us have, why do we have taxonomies across sectors, across value chains? So if you're looking at an enterprise which is in a value chain, a different position in a value chain, has different investment requirements and has different turnover requirements, its challenges are different. Its cash flows are likely to be different. It's likely to operate in a different way. So I think when you club all under one category, there is a general tendency, particularly when you do credit scoring. I'm a technology guy, and when you do credit scoring, you tend to weight certain things in a particular way. So if you say 1 crore is your investment limit, 5 crore is your turnover, that's your upper limit, it skews you. It gives you a skew. So I think having sub classifications makes absolute sense. Because it will allow you to deal with challenges of each of those subcategories. I'll give you an example. Now, I work a lot with the weavers in the Northeast. Now, all of them are going in for IoTs, right? They are putting IoTs into their handlooms. They are bringing in traceability, right, for their products, so that from farm to fiber, fiber to fabric, and fabric to garment is traceable. Now, this will call for more investment. Now, it may not be apparent immediately. So, I think the key point is classifying, breaking down these classifications into more significant categories would be useful, sir, in short.
Yeah, I think both of you are very clearly saying, yeah, we need to know what these small units are by defining based on whatever scale of operation, people employed, whatever metric we adopt. Let's say that we have it now. What exactly they stand to gain from there? For example, the NSSO survey says the asset, what do you call, the turnover is around 1 lakh something per annum. It says that the average loan outstanding is about 16,000 rupees. Now, 16,000 rupees loan, a microfinance loan or a self-help group loan is comfortably able to be meeting that requirement. So by identifying these, are there any great benefit that will accrue? Is it that there will be a new way of dealing with them? What benefits you anticipate will happen? Ramesh, you go first, then I come.
Okay, sir, a very interesting question. And I think if you see, there are a number of enterprises that we came across in our study which required investment beyond 2 lakhs and up to 5, 6 lakhs, right? So that is something which you're not getting easily from anywhere. You're not getting it from your MFIs or SHGs, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong. And there is a difficulty there. And they have turnovers of close to 10 lakhs and employing 3 to 4 people. And new generation enterprises in the data economy, in the green economy, in the care economy, all of that. So these are things that traditional bankers don't understand. So I think you need some kind of an impetus for for financing to happen. Not only financing, even other kinds of certifications and other things. Classification will help in a big way, right? So I think if you ask me in short, this classification will not cannibalize MFI or SHG loans. That will carry on, sir.
So first of all, why it has not happened so far? If the answer is so simple, then what is holding us back? Because it's a very complex issue. There are like different phrases or terms which are floating around in the absence of a proper taxonomy. Very small enterprises, nano enterprises, tiny enterprises. You see so many reports, which refer to within the micro segment, but with different ranges of turnover and so on and so forth. So it is important to standardize, and if it gets standardized, it can be measured. What can be measured is likely to get achieved. We've seen this, especially when it comes to government. Currently, what is happening is, let's say, Mudra. Now, Mudra segment is a classification which is neither here nor there. It's not an RBI terminology and RBI classification. So, and RBI doesn't measure this accordingly within the priority sector. So, bankers are doing this for different reasons. If you ask a credit bureau, they will also give you a dump of mudra, which is not very accurate. So the data quality will not be helpful in making any insights. If, as you said, where is the gap? Gap is those just above the microfinance, group finance segment, the ticket size, say 50,000 plus or 60, 70,000 plus. And those who've not got formalized, they fall in between. And that is where the segmentation is proved to be a challenge. And the policies are also broad brush, not focusing on those areas. So we need to have a trajectory, a pathway where the level above microfinance, which is informal. How do we enable a transition through policies, through technical enablers, through regulatory guidances, and so on and so forth? If I'm sure if we can have a policy and a regulation which tracks, measures, and incentivizes plus disincentivizes this will get achieved. Today, you pick up any document reference, it'll be very hard to find out what percentage of microfinance borrowers have graduate to an enterprise finance. There is no simple, straightforward answer. We are trying to do an exercise with the credit bureau just to figure this out, and it's painful. Uh, if that can be monitored and tracked, then a suitable impetus can be given, and that will automatically lead to results. Some experimentation will be required. What I would also add to that, just being little greedy, since majority of this lower end of the micro enterprise segment would perhaps come from the women folks. Since we are talking of graduation, anywhere between 5 to 10 crores women are group borrowers, SHG plus JLG put together, but we don't know the exact number. I think that's the fundamental problem that needs to be cracked, the level of overlap and the unique members between the two sides put together. Since we are largely wanting them to graduate, if we can also have a gender weightage to priority sector, that's worth an experiment and learn from. Because this is the large pool which will get will move up the ladder or is already moving. It's just that the data analytics don't prove that. That would be very useful, and then that will allow further calibration and focused attention.
So, what I get from what both of you say is, one, if you define, you understand what is the size of the potential. I won't call it a problem. And from a policy point of view, what is it then that needs to be done for meeting this? But when I look back at what do you call it? The needs, if you look at the hierarchy of these institutions, starting from medium to small to micro and now to nano, maybe the requirements at these different levels are different. Though they may be the same, I require technology as a nano unit, I require something different. I require finance. Maybe I'm not good enough to get directly from a bank because my requirement is so small. At the point of delivery, maybe the banker thinks this is a very high cost proposition in terms of operational cost. So the way I require money, I do not want to go to the bank branch and spend so much of time, because then my costs of accessing credit also goes up. So when we look at maybe the same category of need, but the manner in which I need, the quantity of what I need, and the way the provider looks at it, they look very different. Which means, in terms of policy, in terms of our what do you call process response, and even in terms of making available suitable technologies, we have got other things to do very differently. Would you agree with that? And what are some of the things you think that might need to be done differently once we identify this as a separate class, say nano units? Yeah, Amit, you go.
So I would say, sir, for the nano segment, let's say somebody who needs 2 to 3 or 4 lakh rupee loan, what is more important is customized technical assistance, which is closer to the doorstep. And this is very different from what a micro enterprise who has a turnover of 1 crore plus. The formalization has already happened. The technical assistance there required is very different, and for which we have cluster-based approaches, and so many other things. This needs combination of financial assistance and technical assistance of varied kind. It could be, let's say, packaging, marketing, just hand holding to prepare a business plan or a credit proposal, which I have learned the hard way in last 2-3 years. Being pretty hands on is not an easy thing even after Mudra, because the business typologies are so very different. Bank, and the variation that we get to see from bank to bank is also very different. So combination of technical assistance and financial assistance. Just to give a couple of examples, Sidbi's Prayas, they're trying to address this segment. They've come up as a lender, and they are tying up with ecosystem partners who have last mile distribution approach and varied. For that also, to fix a typology is very different. It could be say an entity which has a large pool of gig entrepreneurs working for them, and it could be, say, NRLM's cluster level federation, or it could be a civil society's SKDRDP is a partner. So they themselves have a very different DNA, and the TA that they provide is also very different. So depending upon those middle layers, the typology of TA has to be also very different. Depending upon gender, it has to be different, and the business typology, it has to be different. That's an element which needs to be brought in. To quote somebody else, credit can at best be a grease, but it's not an oil. So those very elements need to be brought in. But today the problem is, how do you package a technical assistance, because the definition of financial assistance to that subsegment is not clear. We're doing working with NRLM and down south in Tamil Nadu, with Tamil Nadu government through TNRTP. We have what is referred to as a one-stop facility, a block level facilitation center, where they provide all of these assistances to not just provide credit, but also to help you grow as an entrepreneur and improve your enterprise's capability to engage with marketplace. Those, as I said, typologies could vary, but that's a very big need, and it cannot come from private sector. By and large, it has to be either public good or ideally a PPP engagement model. That is something coupled and supplemented with this classification and tracking of this nano segment would be very useful. Then you can figure out clearly the delta and return on investment, which is not possible today.
Okay. Ramesh, before you continue on the same thing, I have something to add there. How do you look at facilitating marketing for these small units, which is also one of the issues in that? Sure. So you can add to the original question this piece as well.
Yeah.
Then
I'll add to the original question, and I just want to quote some data from an Access publication from the earlier IFI conference, but that I'll do later. So this is a very interesting aspect, technical assistance. Whether it was the discussion that Mr. Shivakumar sir had with Mr. Ramesh Chand, or whether it's in the case of SMEs, whether it's agriculture, how do you take lab to land? How do you take knowledge to people? How do you get it to them in a manner which is available 24/7, which is available at their convenience, and which is available in a manner in which they can assimilate at their own convenience? This is the key question. And this discussion we had at the IFI conference this year during the AI session, where we talked of conversational AI driven advisors. Today the technology exists, and this is again a discussion that we had at last year's IFI conference with Mr. Raman, who was the earlier chairman of SIDBI. And I think today the technology exists to bring in this knowledge. All this knowledge is useless if it's not available to me as an entrepreneur at a time when I need it, and if it's not available in my language. It's possible to do it in vernacular, it's possible to do it 24/7, and it's possible to do it at the tap of a telephone. So let's do that. So if you ask me what I want, what is my wish list, I would like to see Access and the big institutions get together to do this conversational strategic advisor for different kinds of nano enterprises. So there's so much of knowledge base available. See, ICF, again, I'm quoting agriculture now. ICR has done so much work on agriculture. Where do you take, how do you take this lab to land? I think it's very critical. So that's a big wish list, sir. So I think, so whether it is capacity building, whether it is markets, whether it's price information, Mr. Shivkumar is here. I worked with him on the e-Chopal project, which gave farmers good information on markets. Now we have an opportunity to carry that further, right? So today's technology is available even more. So that's number one. Two, going back to the earlier question, I just wanted to share, Access did a study with looking at the entire ecosystem of RBI and other data and also the Equifax data. And we found two things, very interesting things. The number of accounts were coming down over time in terms of lending, MSME lending, and the average loan outstanding and loan size was going up over time. So you're seeing that translate into action. So that comes because of credit scoring again. So there is a general bias to move towards larger is better, which is again goes back to why you need this classification. But back to you, sir.
So, Amit, I think I'll come to the last round of questions. We already have, say, the priority sector lending norms, which have a broad brush on what should go to the MSME sector. So, when you narrow define and then identify the really tiny ones, where maybe the bank credit support as credit to an enterprise is not that strong. We have a large prevalence of high cost, relatively higher interest rate, microfinance loans, financing a lot of them. Even self-help group loan, they do not come that cheap. There is a markup on the passover. Would you think that a separate category for financing nano enterprises might be a game changer in their access to finance? The other question is, you sort issues in finance. What about marketing? It's highly localized market. With a credit cost, whether they are going to be more profitable or they should look for markets which are more viable. If that's so, then how the nano enterprises will achieve? It's not a question of their increasing their scale, that's not possible. But then how do you access a market which is more viable? Are there any ideas that go on in your mind? On the technical services, you already said what might be possible.
So on pricing, I wish answer was so easy, it would have got solved. But having said this, see, the cost at which a microfinance borrower gets loan, same cost cannot be justified for, let's say, 2 to 3 lakh rupee loan, because the business margins just don't give you that luxury. And currently we are split between two ends of the spectrum. There is a public sector pricing where there is an element of subsidy, and there is a private sector pricing which is very close to microfinance, if it is not exactly microfinance. So the need is to find a middle ground. It cannot be 7% as SHGs or so because of the interest subvention, but it cannot be 20+%. So if we can find a common ground between, say, 12 to 18, depending upon the typologies of the institutions which are lending, that's the target we need to work on. Now, what could be a pathway? Is interest subvention the best way, or there is another way to do it? I would say best would be like it has happened with through SIDBI and NABARD in past. If wholesale financing can be provided to these DFIs who can channelize to institutions who actually are motivated to lend. It could be combination of low cost debt and equity, and let the marketplace decide what they want to do it. We also need to keep in mind that there is a cost of middle layer, because facilitation for financing is required in this segment where the servicing cost is fairly high. If you don't do that, factor in that cost, then it will not work out. So that aspect needs to be taken care of. How to bring that cost takes me to my previous example. It could be federations of NRLM, it could be SKDRDPs. As an example, every state would have multiple such players who needs to be leveraged. And that would also mean a capacity building fund to build their capacities also, say for 2 to 3 years, and then the business cycles will take care of this. This is important, and ideally, if we can go this path, I'm not sure why it has not happened so far, but for that loan of say 1.5 lakh to 3.5 or whatever that may be, that's can be decided by the experts. This combination of these elements are required. As far as marketing is concerned, I have a my experience has been little mixed. In villages, you may find, for for me to move from my subsistence or say livelihood initiative and become an enterprise, even catering to the market within my say village or panchayat, it itself is considerable opportunity. What we often see is this is relative, given the financing available and somewhat of a technical assistance handholding available, I can achieve this. Mm. Which itself, for majority of these entrepreneurs, may be a good thing, progression. What we see, once you achieve that level, there is a dropout. Now, this could be for two reasons. I don't get enough technical assistance and funding to move beyond the local geography and be able to market my products to other areas. Second could be I was in this enterprise not because of my first choice, but also because of compulsion. I may be not be entrepreneurial enough. So that's where also the drop happens, which is natural, and we should accept that. Third is this actually, there is a need where technical assistance has to go beyond simple hand holding to bring in an element of competitiveness, which doesn't happen in the immediate local vicinity and the business. So that competitiveness is important, and only if that element comes in, then marketing would play a role, and the technical assistance to bring markets closer to you or make you go closer to external markets is relevant. The combination of the two is very important. We've seen this playing out with varying degree of success in FPOs. That's the basic reason why FPOs were formed, so as to do economies of scale, aggregation, and marketing. If that can be applied in the non-farm sector and apply the learnings of that to the non-farm sector, I think there will automatically be a lot of learnings and modeling that can lead us to next steps.
Yeah, I want us to go back 22 years. I met you at Nabard when you were chief general manager in Bandra Kurla, and we spoke of a word. This was part of a DFID project. You said financial deepening, and that's what I want to bring in now here. It's not just loans; it's much more than that. You need small and medium. Your nano enterprises need much more than loans. Your traditional term loans or your working capital loans. Let's look at needs very differently, like all of us need. Financial deepening is the order of the day. And I think whether it's insurance, parametric insurance, whether it's any other kind of emergency loan, climate disasters are dime a dozen, right? And what happens is there is disruption of business. You want that business to continue. So we need mechanisms for them to be able to be resilient. How do we build resilience? So I think financial deepening is very critical. This definition will possibly help towards that. And I won't take much time. Well, the one last point I want to make is that in terms of marketing, access to financial deepening products, whether it's your parametric insurance, I hope there are no insurers around. It is horrific for an SME to go and get an indemnity-based insurance, which is why I'm emphasizing even outcome-based insurance. So that pensions, other kinds of products will be of paramount importance. It'll whether it's marketing, whether it's anything else, it'll enhance their staying, bargaining, and negotiating power. Where does money help? At the end of the day, whether I'm in aquaculture, whether I'm in agriculture, whether I'm in handlooms, whether I'm in solar green economy, whether I'm in care economy, I need to have that buffer to be able to negotiate better. And I think that's where I think part of your marketing problem also gets solved when I have access to a range of financial products. And this goes back to the discussion we had 22 years ago, financial deepening, sir. That says a lot.
Thank you, Ramesh. I think we shouldn't detain the audience for much longer time when they are trying to seek out lunch. I'll just try and conclude based on what we discussed. The sum and substance is yes, we need to know where these tiny units are and how we identify them. So we require a much clearer definition of the tiniest sized enterprises. We need to know this because we have to deal with them differently, not with the rest of the what we call micro, which is still far too large. Between 100,000 turnover and a 1 crore turnover, there's a huge difference. And the needs, they may be in the same category, finance, markets, technology, but then how it will be delivered and how that will be received, consumed, and activized, there are lots of differences, so we need to do this. But then we know that the cost of delivery, cost of operating at this level, they are high for somebody who comes from above to provide services, support, finance. So we need some amount of intermediary institution, some amount of aggregation elsewhere, so that these people are able to reach viable markets, viable spaces. At the same time, ensure that the enterprise spirit results in livelihoods, results in employment, which is also one of the core issues that we are dealing with. When I look back to some of the experiments that we have done in the country, say Pradhan did the aggregation or collectivization through their what you call cooperatives, whether it is in silk or whether it is in egg marketing, poultry. You look at hand in hand, they use technology for providing access to markets for women entrepreneurs, training them on how they can market it through, say, mobile phones. SKDRDP did it differently by organizing cluster-based networks of women, promoting enterprises and helping them reach services elsewhere. And as an NGO, they also brought in technical services to the cluster. But these are isolated islands of excellence. We need to have much more. So in mainstream, once we identify the nano units, there should be a policy response, there should be a finance response. There should also be something that comes from within the industry. For example, small industries, they have their association, they do good work. For nano industries, who will organize, who will provide an umbrella where these people can come, rally behind, and then, so we have got some work to be done there further. You want to make some last comment, Ramesh? I could see your mic there. Then we conclude.
No, I wasn't giving you a hint, but no, I just wanted to share a very interesting point. If you go back and see how Tirupur scaled in Tamil Nadu, it's worthwhile looking at that, because I think it's not just nano enterprises. It's not one size fit all. It is value chain based. If you look at Tirupur, there were master cutters who would have gotten 10,000 rupees loans and 15,000 rupee loans. The Center for Promotion of Imports from Developing Countries, it's incidentally called the CBI, nothing to do with our CBI. It is in Netherlands, and they've got a very interesting program. They send consultants on a product adaptation mission. They stay with the nano enterprise for about 10 weeks, get them to adapt their product to local or international markets, and then release it. And I think that did wonders to Tirupur. And today, Tirupur is a 4 billion industry. It's a standing example of how an ordinary master cutter with no shop sitting on the pavement is now having swimming pools in his house. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ramesh, for that. We invite all the questions from the audience during lunchtime. Thank you all for your patience.
Thank you, sir, for a very thought-provoking and engaging discussion. We'd like to present a small token to all of our esteemed speakers and the esteemed moderator. So our thanks to Mr. N. Srinivasan, Mr. Ramesh Arunachalam, and Mr. Amit Arora. Thank you for being the initiators of this very topical discussion.